Hello, welcome to my live stream. No, the thumbnail said Angular After Dark, but this is just a general stream on my YouTube channel. So today is an Ask Me Anything episode. So I will, I don't know, I'll talk about whatever you'd like to know more about. So let's see if anyone has a suggestion in the chat. And for those of you that might not know me, I'm Lars from Denmark. Been working with software professionally for 9 years. I am a front-end architect by day, mostly doing development intentionally because that's what I like. I'm also a GitHub star. I'm a Microsoft MVP and developer technologies. I'm the organizer of the Aarhus JS meetup in Denmark. I'm the organizer and co-founder of This is Learning. And we do a lot of interesting stuff. And that is a community that everyone is able to join. Just ask and you'll get an invite. So, hello, Christopher. Thank you for joining. What would you like to know about? You can ask me anything. So, a few more people have joined. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat, or I'll just keep talking about random things. I already talked about This is Learning a little bit. Some of our content is we have a couple of blogs on Dev Community. We have the two first open learning courses. There's one called RxJS Fundamentals, which is you can go take that course if you're all new to RxJS. You can also go if you're kind of a little. You can learn something from some of the parts as well. And the NGRX Essentials course is from zero to hero, basically. And it covers NGRX store and effects. Hello, Oscar. Thank you for joining. Nice to see you. And Christopher, you've been implementing scams. It's going well, but you're unclear what good ways to implement routing is. Oh. Yeah. So scams, single component Angular modules have become more and more popular. There's now scam generators for NX in recent versions. And you were asking about routing. Okay, let's see. I think I wrote an article about this, so I'll try to find that. I think I have some examples of many of the possible scams. Let me just find it here. Second. Computer is not very good today. I don't know. Okay. So I'll try to figure out how to share my screen. And there it is. Okay. So you can find this on Dev Community, emulating tree shakeable components using single component Angular modules. Tree shakeable components was my term for what is now more commonly known as standalone components in Angular. and these are the scams, single component Angular modules. So this was published 2.5 years ago, and there was a more experimental article before that, covering some of the stuff that still needs to be solved in Angular if we ever want to get module-free applications, because standalone components is only part of a fully optional module system in Angular. Anyways, in this article, I think we have a few. This is, let's see. Here it is. Yeah. So this is the scam of a component that's supposed to be routed. So it declares the component, but it doesn't export anything, indicating that it must be used dynamically in some way. Routing is dynamic rendering, and there are other ways to render dynamically in Angular. So this is the scam, and scams are about presentation. It's about linking the declarable scope of a component. It's about being able to use directives, pipes, and components in other components, being very selective about the dependencies in our component templates. And here is an example of a routing module here where we have one route, and to be able to route to a component, we have to import the scam. I think I probably looks like I forgot something here, because we also have to import this my module, which is a scam, to be able to route to that component. And yeah, you have read it, and Christopher read your blog and stated routing doesn't go in scam, but then when it's level higher, you're importing component model and a reference to component, I think, to set up routing. Yes. I'm wondering, I have a repo that we can open. Let's go check it out. To see if I'm I'm most likely using the scam pattern. Let's see. So here's let's take a simple one, the heroes dashboard. So here's the that was the style sheet. So this is the dashboard component, and here should be its scam, I guess. So let's see. Yeah, it declares this one component. Is this big enough? Yeah, it should be big enough. Exports this one component. Yeah, so like, I guess, I mean, this should be a routed component, right? So where is it used? Oh, it's because we have a page in this domain, so it's not actually routed. But maybe the page is a routed component then. Okay, so here is the heroes page component. It also has a scam here. And here is an example of it's only declaring this component, which indicates to me this is probably a routed component or used for dynamic rendering. So this is the scam for just that heroes page component. Let's go one level up, another level up, and here we can then see a sort of a shell module for this domain or this page. So this is similar to the article, right? We have a route with a routes array with a single route, and we're routing to this heroes page component. We're registering the routes, and we're also importing this heroes page module, which is a scam. So this is a good pattern, what we see here. So let me post this repository in the chat, and you can go look at that yourself. I took one of the two of Heroes tutorials, or maybe even a few combined, and started refactoring it using NX and refactoring it into a bunch of libraries. So yeah, this is where you can look at examples of that. Okay. So who else is here? Oscar, do you know any example of implementing NX Cloud? Yes. Yes, I do. Would you say it might be considered like a security risk? Yes. Yeah, there's definitely, it's insecure by default if you have a public repository, NX Cloud, that is. This is something we tackled at work recently because we are doing open source, but and we're using NX Cloud. So let me try to find our repo, and you can see how we set it up. Okay, so I'll link to our front-end mono repo. It looks like so. And or this is the URL, right? So let me share screen again. Here we go. This is it. So let's see what we did. Well, okay, so you're asking about two things. You're asking about implementing NX Cloud, and you're asking about, is it insecure? So let's tackle the first one. To install NX Cloud, if you're using GitHub, you can install a GitHub app. So let's go to the GitHub Marketplace and search for NX. We will get a hit. Here it is, official NX Cloud app. So GitHub apps are to create a GitHub app, you would have to run a server yourself. And that's what NX Cloud app is. It's some service running somewhere, and it then goes and does things to our pull request, for example. We will see an example of that soon enough. So you can set up a plan because NX Cloud is a paid product. However, for open source work, you can ask for a free license with Narwhal, and they'll get you coupon codes for 10,000 hours saved. At least that's the way it used to be. They have changed their price plans, but yeah. Anyways, you can send an email to is it like cloud support at narwhal.io or something like that, or just, I don't know, ask Brandon Roberts, he'll know. Yeah, so GitHub apps, you can install them to separate repos. Let's see, I have Sonar Cloud here. Switch to another account. Oh, these are not my work accounts. Yeah, okay, so here it is. Install for free. I don't see my work accounts here. Yeah, probably because maybe I'm not an admin of our GitHub organization at work. So yeah, I don't know. Anyways, that's what you should be able to do. Click install, choose your organization, and choose your repos. Anyways, it's installed in our repo. And Oscar, you're using Azure DevOps. You don't have to use the GitHub app to use NX Cloud. It just adds some nice messages to your pull request. Let's go look at one. So there's one here. Let's see. Should have an NX Cloud report, so we can see the different NX commands being run in this, all the workflows in this pull request. And we can click them and see some things in the NX Cloud app or website. Here's the command that was run. What else? This was end-to-end testing for one of our applications. The CI configuration. And here are the tests. Not that many. It's a pretty new project still. And most of our tests are integration tests, not end-to-end tests. Yeah, there's lots of nice stats here. For example, we could go look at time saved. So we saved 6 hours of compute time. Yeah, mostly with builds. Like half of our builds are cached and recovered. And end-to-end tests, nice. And integration tests. Yeah. Seems like we don't have a cache of storybook builds, or maybe they're just not being built all the time. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so this is what NX Cloud looks like when it's set up. And if we install a GitHub app, we get comments from NX Cloud like this. And another link here. And then, but really, NX Cloud, let's see. It's really about a configuration if you want to use it. So let's go find our NX JSON configuration file, and should see here that our NX task runner is NX Cloud, and it will cache all these targets here. All these, if we have build, lint, test, and end-to-end targets on a project. And there's no built storybook here, so that's probably why it's not cached. But those will be cached in the cloud. And here is our access token. But this is where we get into your second question, and let's dive into that in a moment. But anyways, this is how you set up NX Cloud. You use the NX Cloud runner. You give it an access token, and one is automatically generated if you run the init NX generator for NX Cloud. So it would be something like, see if I can remember, would be something like NX generate novel, it's called NX Cloud init. I think it's something like this. If you run this command, you will get a new key. And with this enabled, anytime you run an NX command, it will be cached in the cloud, or it will retrieve a cached build output and reports and things like that, results from the cloud, the NX Cloud. So, for example, we might have some workflows in here. Let's look at our GitHub workflows. Here's our main shared front-end CI workflows. Here's some more settings, by the way. Yeah, setting this up is good for when you want to use the NX Cloud website or web app, and also for those reports and if you're using GitHub and install this GitHub app for NX Cloud. So set these environment variables, NX branch, NX Cloud access token, and NX run group, and it will be able to, let's see. Yeah, it will, the commands that are executed as part of one workflow run will be grouped together. And also, yeah, I don't know about this, but anyways, these are some settings from NX. So this is a good way to set it up. So let's look at some examples of using NX commands. Down here, let's see, we have some jobs. Here's our build job. So we have some hocus pocus to be able to use the affected commands. Recently, they created a GitHub action for doing this stuff. but I was doing it manually and didn't change it in this repo yet. And basically you need the base branch to be able to compare what is affected in the current branch. So in the pull request branch, what has changed, and that then has, when you run this, for example, this yarn affected, or this is an NX affected build is being run in the npm script, and it compares to this base origin base branch, and the base branch is computed somewhere. I don't know, where is it? Somewhere up here. Can't remember. This is a big workflow. Anyways, yarn affected build behind the scenes, that is NX affected build with some parameters. So whenever any NX command is being run, it will be connected to NX Cloud. And you're asking here, Oscar, is the cache from NX Cloud shared during development time? Yeah. So that is related to the security part of your question. Would you say it may be considered a security risk? So if you're using a private repo, probably don't worry about it, because everything is encrypted that's being communicated and stored in the NX Cloud. But the security risk is if someone else is able to use the access to your NX Cloud access token, because then they might overwrite the cache. If they're skilled, they can figure out how to overwrite the cache in your NX Cloud instance, and that might mean that something will be deployed to your server that they decided what was being deployed instead of the cached build or whatever. So 2 parts here. First part is normally you get an access token here generated when you're initializing NX Cloud. But what we did here is this is being used locally. So when we're running NX commands locally, like NX build, NX test, it's using this access token. But inside the NX Cloud website, we generated this as a read-only token. So it can only read from the NX Cloud cache, which means local builds, local test results, things like that, will not be on our developer machines, will not be pushed to the cloud, the NX Cloud, and cached. So we lose some of the benefit because we cannot share our results with our colleagues on the team. But the CI servers in our workflow is still able to write to the cache. And the way it's doing that is up here somewhere. I think we saw it before. Here, NX Cloud Access Token. So it's in a repository secret here in GitHub called NX Cloud Access Token. The secret can be called whatever, but we have to set this environment variable on the, here we have it on the entire workflow because it's being used basically in all the jobs. We could also set it on the job or even on the single job step calling an NX command. So the machine needs to have this environment variable, and it will use that as the access code, and that will take precedence over the one configured in the NX.json file. So that's the way this works. The access token that's generated initially is a read-write token. Otherwise, you wouldn't get any benefit from the cache because no one would be able to write to the cache. So in our NX.json, we generate this read-only key, and that is being used on our local developer machines. So we will read from the cache. So if a test has been run by the CI server, we will benefit from that. And we saw in our stats on the NX web app that it has a good effect. Half of our build time is cut to half. Like we're hitting the cache half of the time when we're doing builds. and tests and end-to-end tests and lints. So it's giving us good benefit, and this is the way to do it securely. There's a guides, 1 or 2 guides about this on the NX website, but this is the best way we figured out how to do it. So read-only key for the developers, and that ties into your question here. Is it shared during development time? Yes, it's shared from the CI servers to me and my colleagues, not the other way. It's a one-way cache. So the CI server will be able to write to the cache because it has this secret key, NX Cloud Access Token, which is a read-write access token. You can set that up if you're an NX Cloud administrator on nx.app. And I won't show you our setup because I don't want to expose anything that might be secret in there. I don't remember what it looks like, but anyways, it's in the nx.app website. You can generate new keys. Yeah, so and it seems like it makes sense to you, Oscar. Great. So what else? Any more questions? Just write them in the chat. Okay, so I can talk about other things until then. This is learning. We have courses. They are open learning courses because they're free and available to everyone, and you're able to contribute to them. And you can just press the edit link on any website, and you'll go open a pull request to that markdown file, or maybe it's MDX for the NGRX course, I think. Yeah. So, anyways, it's relatively easily to contribute, and any contributions are very welcome, more than welcome. The courses are not like there's definitely room for improvement on even small things like typos and formatting, things like that, but also just the content overall. Some of the later parts of the NGRX course still needs some review and some changes and things like that. Where can you find the courses? You will find them in our GitHub organizations. So let me find that. So here's this is Angular GitHub organization. So here we have the NGRX Essentials course. And there you'll find the link. This is the source code, of course, and you'll find the link to the GitHub page. So this is what it looks like. Start the course, and there's 12 chapters here about, from fundamentals to more advanced stuff. So this is a really great course. It was originally created by Armin Vadanyan from Armenia, but now it's fully open source. It has this Creative Commons share-alike license, which is very open forever. So now it's a community ownership. And several people have contributed. And if we go, instead of this is Angular, we also have this is learning GitHub organization. Here we'll find the RxJS fundamentals course. And same thing, this is the source code. We're using Docusaurus 2. And you can find the link here, which will get us to the course. Start the course, and we have 6 parts here. And this is more, this is an introduction to RxJS, but there's also a little more advanced stuff. For example, here in part 5, we use Akita, and then we create a feature, or we look at a feature in a React component, and then reuse the Akita state for an Angular component so that we can share our state management. So and there's a chapter about how is RxJS used by Angular. So there's some good stuff in here, and it's totally free, and you should submit pull requests to, even if you want to add another chapter, that would be great, something like that. There's much work to be done in the NGX Essentials course to, and we have Alain Boudoir is currently reviewing some of the chapters of that NGX course, so that's great. Thank you very much, Alain. Yeah. So open learning, because it's open source, it's free and open to everyone, and that's what we like to do. We like to share our knowledge. We have a YouTube channel as well. We're doing some talk shows from time to time, some live coding. It's currently on a bit of a break because Santosh is doing other things right now in his personal life. But it'll be back sometime next year, and if you want to host it, come join it. It's an open platform like all of our things. It's open to anyone. Just ask and you'll be able to join. When I tweeted about this Ask Me Anything session, I think it was Colin Ferry was asking about writing a book and publishing a book. I recently wrote my first book. It's this one. Well, I've been writing since, I think I started in June 2020, and it was published here in late October 2021. It's called Accelerating Angular Development with Ivy. So it's a book for experienced Angular developers. You don't have to be an expert, but even if you are, you'll learn something from this book. But you have to know your way around Angular to get great value from this book. It won't introduce components and services and dependency injection and Angular CLI and setting up an application, all of that. You're expected to know that before reading this book. Then you'll get a lot of benefit from it. It's published by Pack Publishing. I wrote it with Jacob Andresen, also a Dane, and people seem to be happy about it. So I'm glad about that. About writing the book, well, so my experience with this book was the publisher wanted a very detailed plan for the book because they own the rights, and I just get paid royalties together with Jacob. And so I guess they were trying to make us expendable. They had a full plan, so if we copped out or got cold feet or dragged out the time, they would just replace us with someone else. So that's not a good place to be in, but that's their way of doing business. The book was my idea. They asked for a very detailed plan, so I had to come up with all the chapters, like 12 chapters, right? And it was going to cover what's new in the Ivy versions of Angular, and that's ranging from version 9 to version 12. It's not covering version 13 because that was released after the book, right? So, but it was my idea, and I originally was planning the book together with one of my friends who wanted to be a co-author. So he helped me write the disposition for the book, like all the chapters and their what are we going to put in the chapters. There's titles and headlines for every chapter, every section of every chapter, and a description of every chapter and every section, and a page count and a plan for when each chapter is done. So very waterfall, big plan up first kind of thing, which I thought sucked a lot. It took us months before we could actually start writing, and that didn't feel very nice. because in the beginning was the time I had the most time on my hands to write the book. So yeah, and then unfortunately my friend left the project, and I tweeted about people who wanted to co-author the book, and found Jacob. Didn't know him before, and yeah, it took more time than we originally planned for because of various things. But yeah, eventually we got there, and the good thing is we got to cover 2 more versions of Angular because of the delay. So I removed some things that have been changed or rolled back, and removed that from the book, added new things, covered some more things, and yeah, updated some of the plans for yeah, things like Angular compatibility compiler, uh, the library, Ivy library distributions, things like that's covered in the book. And the book is great. Thank you, Oscar. You have a question from a colleague about incremental DOM versus with Ivy. Is that the correct way of calling it? Yes, it is. There is a library from Google that is called Incremental DOM. It's a few years old. I don't know, like 3 or 4 maybe. And yeah, the Ivy instruction set is an incremental DOM library. So it shares kind of the same architecture. So it's basically it's something like I don't know, a bytecode language for the web, or I don't know, yeah, bytecode or domain specific language. It's pretty low level, and it's things like commands for updating the text of a DOM element, but it's also things like resolving dependency from the dependency injection systems, and creating DOM elements, changing attributes on a DOM element. So it's all these things that Angular is able to do when you have a component or something like that attached to the DOM. And which means that the same instructions are being reused at runtime, and a component is a component template is compiled to Ivy instruction calls with parameters, which means that the Ivy instruction set is shared between all your components in your application, but the ones you're not using in your application can be left out of the bundle. So the Ivy instruction set is tree shakeable, which means that we can get some pretty small apps at this point, and it'll be even better. Some of the View Engine leftovers were recently removed, and what's left right now from removing the View Engine entirely? Well, mostly the Angular compatibility compiler at this point, I guess. But yeah, there's still some things left over from View Engine in the Angular code base, and removing that will make things faster and will make the packages from npm smaller. It will make it a more maintainable framework. So all good things. Well, thank you again for joining, Christopher. You have a good night as well. You're probably you might be a few hours ahead of me. In Denmark, it's 10 p.m. Yeah. Okay, so Oscar, is there a particular question about this incremental DOM or the Ivy instruction set, or were you just asking whether it's a proper way of describing it? Yes, I think the Ivy instruction set is pretty much an incremental DOM library, but there is an actual library called Incremental DOM created by Google as well. And yeah, like way before Ivy was even released, Victor Sapkin wrote an article about incremental DOM versus virtual DOM or something like that, which kind of describes some of the trade-offs and talks more about what is incremental DOM. Okay, so you got the question answered. Let's see if we can find that article by Victor, and you could go read more about it. Here it is. It's called Understanding Angular IV, Incremental DOM and Virtual DOM. This is the URL. It's from Victor Savkin from 2019. So it was a year before Angular 9, which was the first release with a stable IV implementation. So yeah, what is virtual DOM? What is incremental DOM? Advantages, disadvantages, and what will an Angular compiled component look like? So this changed a bit since this article was written, but yeah, the basic concepts are still the same. Instructions look a bit different now, but yeah, you can see basically we have a component is having a template function that gets the render flags variable. It's a bit mask and the context for the component, so what's in its scope. So if the bit mask says 1, it means create the DOM, so the component is being initialized for the first time. So it has an async pipe, and wait, is this? Yeah. Okay, so the first thing being created is the async pipe, and then a template of how to read this stuff. So it's okay. So this is the second thing actually, and the first thing has the 0 index. I don't know what this is. A div element, I guess. Let's see. Yeah, div element. So whenever there's a change here, do I need to zoom in even more? A little bit maybe. So whenever there's a change, this condition will be true, this bit mask, so which means update the DOM. So now we will go to the element with index 0, and we'll go to the ng4 of property, and we will bind through a pipe, the first pipe, which is the async pipe, or the one indexed pipe. We'll bind what? One? I don't know. Maybe it's something, I can't remember this exactly, but maybe it's this one, refers to this one. I don't know. No, the element is 0, so here it is. So what is this one? Maybe it's is it a value? No, I have no idea. That probably means something. It's an enum, which the value is then 1, but what does the enum mean? I have no idea. But it will pass the to-dos property from the scope, the context of this component, pass it through the async pipe, and then bind it to the ng4 of property here. Yeah. And up here we see the component factory for the to-dos component, and it's injecting a store. So that will be something like an inject store. And then here we see the class that it's storing the store in the property, and it's selecting the to-dos from what is most likely an inject store. Okay, yeah. So this was an example of the IV instruction set. This is a compiled output of a component, but it looks a little bit different today in the final versions of Angular, and it's still not 100% stable. The Angular team kind of reserves the right to change it, so they didn't want to make a final or stable, even a stable version of the IV instruction set. So you cannot depend on this. So don't build a library that depends on this, or even tooling, because it might change at any time. theoretically. It would be nice if there was like a stable version, because then we could build some very nice tooling, runtime tooling or code generation. Maybe you could create a different template language that compiled to Ivy instruction set. But as long as it's not a stable API, it doesn't work very well, because you would have to invest a lot of time doing it. And if it changes every year, you might not want to do that. Okay, so that was about Ivy, the incremental DOM approach of the Ivy instruction set. Talked about my book, talked about This is Learning, talked about This is Angular, which also has courses and blogs. We have a private Discord community for the public tech contributors. You're welcome to join if you are writing articles, doing talks, doing open source, organizing communities, anything like that. Or maybe you want to get started, you're also very welcome to join. Just ask me or Santosh Yadav, and you'll get an invitation. There's also a public Discord server for This is Learning, so anyone can join that at any time. Go to our newsletter to get the link, or ask us, or yeah, that's the way to join that. So that's an entirely public server. I'm also doing some open source things like libraries and contributions to other things, but I'm maintaining some libraries. It's mostly Angular libraries right now. We have the Lumberjack logging library, which is a plugin based architecture, so that the Lumberjack API is the one you're using in your application, and you can register different plugins so that you can connect it to log providers, for example, certain clouds or certain log as a service providers or something like that, even multiple ones, or you could create a plugin for displaying the logs in the UI. There's some bundled with Lumberjack that you can use for outputting to the browser console, and there's one for HTTP, so that it just posts to an endpoint and it posts a certain object. You can customize the properties that are being added to your log objects. There's different log levels and scopes optionally, and log messages. You can add a log payload, so it's very customizable and extendable. There's a whole repo if you want to create your own community plugin for Lumberjack. And an interesting part is we support all versions of Angular going back to version 9, I think. Or is it 8? No, we didn't care enough about 8. And so it's version 9. So we support all major and minor versions of Angular from 9.0 going forward. And we have tested all of that by switching the version of Angular in our workflow. So we have many jobs running for every commit. We're running the unit test with different versions of Angular. We're running the end-to-end test with different versions of Angular apps. That's quite a complicated setup. But that allows us to roll out features on different versions, many different versions of Angular at the same time. And also the plugins don't have to worry about creating a new version every time there's a new version of Angular. They just have to mostly care about the version of Lumberjack, which is version 2, and has been in it for a year now, or something like that. And of course, there might be some log provider library for, say, I don't know, Azure Application Insights that might only be compatible with certain versions of TypeScript. So of course that puts limitation on which versions of Angular it can work with. But Lumberjack itself supports many versions of Angular, many versions of TypeScript, and many versions of Node.js, RxJS, I don't know. I'm not sure if we have probably haven't tested it with RxJS 7, but I'm not sure how much. We're not using observables much, maybe for the HTTP log driver. Anyways, you could go check that out if you wanted to. The package is called. I'll put a link to the npm package. Check it out if you'd like. This is Lumberjack, the plugin-based logging library for Angular. We have Spectacular, an integration testing library for Angular, which is basically the same URL. That's an interesting one as well. It has a testing harness for testing Angular pipes. It has one for application initializers and Bootstrap listeners. It has an API for testing Angular features, so routed feature modules. So you can test like a whole part of your application with a shared test setup and without faking or replacing anything with stops or marks or anything like that, spies. So that will make you able to verify both the routes and all the components, all the services, all the pipes, everything defined or as an entry point with using a routed feature module. You'll be able to pass that to Spectacular, and maybe you could use something like Angular testing library. Then you'll have a really nice setup for testing as a user and covering all your code in an entire part of your Angular application without faking anything for the tests. So that's a really nice testing approach. Feel free to ask any questions. Otherwise, I'll just keep talking about random things I'm doing. So we also have an interesting project called the Angular versions action. That's a GitHub action that allows us to run our code base with different versions of Angular, which is how we're testing Lumberjack. Unfortunately, it only supports Angular CLI, so it doesn't support NX CLI yet. You're very happy to help implement it. It's definitely something we would like because we need it ourselves for Spectacular and other projects. Recently, I created the ngWorker router component store package, or at least the very first pre-release versions of it, that is using NGX component store to hook into the router. So you can subscribe to route parameters, you can subscribe to what they call like query parameters and everything like that, the route URL and things like that. Oscar is asking, is it okay to know what is your approach on building a component library? Component library. So what do you have in mind, Oscar, specifically? Because I haven't built, well, I've been part of implementing 2 design systems at work, and one of them is now public, open source. Yeah, okay. A UX UI specialist will hand over a Figma design. Yeah. So, well, that's exactly what we have been doing at work for the past 2 years on a few projects. So, and first time around, we found a Sass plugin to export certain variables from Figma so that we could generate those and put them in our code base. So we got things like colors and fonts, maybe, and font sizes, a few things like that. So that was our design tokens that were synchronized from Figma. I recently saw a very interesting talk in person. Unfortunately, it wasn't recorded, but it's about there's kind of being written a new standard for exporting and importing design tokens from different systems like Figma. So I think there's already support for exporting design tokens from Figma to this JSON format, or there will be pretty soon. So that will be amazing. You'll be able to define these design tokens in Figma, and you can export them without any further plugin. Then you can start using that in your application. That's pretty powerful. And part of that talk by a Dane called Jacob Engelbrecht is it was also kind of a methodology for design tokens, like naming for them and scopes and a few modifiers and things like that. So it was a little similar to like the BEM, the BEM methodology for naming CSS classes, but for design tokens. That was pretty interesting. Answered a lot of problems I faced in the past. So a UX designer will hand over a Figma design, Oscar, and then what? Well, you get read-only access to Figma, and you go look up the CSS values because there's a panel for that. So we've been doing components only in Angular. Even though it's a design system, we're only doing Angular applications, so we don't have the need to be generating web components. Although that might be something you could consider, right? And Angular does have Angular elements for that. They have a few downsides, but they're usable. But okay, so some things to consider. Well, there's some nice articles around there for designing an API of a component, a UI component. If it's a web component or an Angular component, whatever. So if you think of native DOM elements, they don't have much of like how would you pass an object to them? Would you pass them a JSON value? Certainly not. That's not really a nice way of passing things. In Angular, we have data binding, and of course, web components do support like properties in addition to attributes. But if you were sticking to attributes, you'd only be able to pass string values, and in web they are like they might be referring to the ID of another DOM element, and for example the data list element that can be used for native autocomplete for a select element, or right? Yeah, the select element, right? So the select element will be pointing to the ID of a data list, which will have all the possible values that will then be suggested to the users. That's one way of like thinking about what's the API, and do we want to keep it web native and like web components? Do we want to use similar approach, or do we want to make it convenient for Angular developers? Then we just have input and output properties. There's other things like which data binding APIs do you want to support? Say if it's a user control, like a date picker or drop down or an input field of some kind, would you want the consumer to be able to use it as with reactive forms? They want to be able to use it with template-driven forms, or do you want to give them access to two-way data binding, or maybe all three, or two of them, or things like that are pretty hard to do, especially if you're wrapping another UI library like Angular Material. It isn't really meant to be used in that way, and it's not very customizable. Hey, Sakan, you're up late. You should be sleeping like a baby right now, but nice to see you. Okay, Oscar, in the Tiny Angle applications, that's an article and a repo. I showed how to split styles in a library. Will that help on modularizing and organizing the workspace? You can have SAS tools that can be exported from your design system library, whatever you want to call it, your UI library that's shared. I don't know about splitting them into like even smaller chunks, like I don't know, maybe some variables for each component. I don't really know about that, how to do it, or best practices. But well, we have the work we're doing right now uh, at with my customer. That is open source, so you could go look there. I've already looked at this repo. You could go look there. Let me find it. So again, here's the link for that. And so let's go look for in our libs. We have the UI what. Our design system is called what, and here you'll see like an example of a UI component library. So let's see, it has an asset folder with some icons and PNG, and in the libs it does have some styles as well. So here's an example of having styles in a UI library. So and in the code base you'll see places where it's being used, like I think it's in the either in the apps or maybe they have style libraries for the apps. Let's see. No, apparently not. So it might still be in the apps. Here, yeah. So here we're importing from this library that's in the same repo. The what design system, right? So this is an example of that, and yeah, you can also look at the example of how the components are implemented. They are wrapping Angular material currently. So there's actually a lot of style utilities here, and we have a storybook deployed for this library as well. And I don't know, we have a different components here, like an app shell and form fields and buttons and badges and autocomplete. So yeah, you can go look at that. And that of course I'm happy to be doing open source, or at least public source code at work as well. It's not being driven much as open source, but it is public source, and you are able to do pull requests. But if you do ping me, I think we actually got a pull request from Tim DeSchreiber, who helped us. He created a new version of what's it called, the Nginx plugin for ESLint. Might be there's a lot of traffic here in this repo. Where many teams working on it. Yeah, somewhere in here. Let's see. When was this? I think it's here. There it is. Yeah. Awesome. So Tim contributed. He signed our CLA and everything, and there we go. So yeah. Thank you, Tim. So now he's a contributor as well, as you might be able to see here. Right? Come on. Where's Tim? Oh, not everyone was being displayed out there. probably just the top contributors. You should be here. Oh, Serkan, what is the topic? It's an Ask Me Anything session. So whatever you're asking on the stream, we'll talk about, or I'll talk about different public tech contributions. Okay, contributors. Here's Javad. You might know him. He's my colleague. And here's Alexander Hafstad from NG Vikings and NG Copenhagen. I also work with him. Here's me, some other colleagues. The GitHub bot has quite a few commits. And Tim should be in here somewhere. There he is. One commit. We're very happy to get his help on that. And that's the beauty, one of the beauties of open source, right? Yeah, so lots of things going on here. And I don't know. Let's see one of our workflows. This one, the front end one. Let's see a passing one. This was the merge. Where's the pull request? That's probably this one. Oh, that was the wrong workflow. Wasn't it? No. Okay, so we got build, format, lint, end-to-end test, unit, and integration tests. Yeah, 4.5 minutes. That's below the magical lines of 5 minutes, which is where you want to be with a deployment pipeline. And we have different options for speeding all of this up as the code base grows. But we have already taken some measures. Well, you have a good night as well, Oscar. And thank you for the questions. Okay, so what else is interesting here? Well, I think it's interesting that we have I created some bot tasks. So every time there's like a pull request, you might see some commits. Not in this one, apparently, but you might see some commits from bots. There's some backend code in here as well. So I'm looking for some front end. Here is the Angular 13 update a week ago. Let's see if there's commits from bots. No. Oh, here's one. Yeah. So we have GitHub Actions that goes in and runs NX format. And there's also one doing like, there's one for lint fixes. There's one for, what else is there? There's one for generating from one of the backends. We are generating an Angular client from the Open API spec. So there's also a bot doing that if you forget to do it yourself. Yeah, so that's typically me. Oh, and the last thing, yeah, there was also one adding we're doing license headers for every file, basically. So in most files, you'll see this. Let's see. Where's a new file being created? Okay, I'll have to go to the... come on. Let's find a file. Here we go. So we have to add this license header to basically most of our files. And I refused to do that. So we created an NX, Alexander created an NX executor, I think. Or was it an NX generator? Anyways, it goes and adds these licenses. We have We have a configuration file here called license RC that is defining the license header for different types of files. So we'll find TypeScript and JavaScript and protobuf and Sass here. So this is the header. So based on this configuration, we have an NX executor, I think, adding it, and there's a GitHub. Is it an app? Yeah, I think there's an app. If I go to back to the PR, we'll probably see an app check here. License check CI. Yeah, this one. This is a GitHub action, so it's checking that we have the license headers in all the files that we have configured in that configuration we saw before. And this is a little interesting because this action is actually a Deno app. So it's pretty fast, 3 seconds, but we had to build a container first. That took 27 seconds. I don't know if it caches that. Sometimes it goes a little faster, but anyway, the Deno app was super fast for checking all these files. Here we see it. I was even downloading all the Deno modules. That's pretty cool. Nice. Yeah, so this is things like typically me. I like to do things like that, like helpful things for developers. Been learning a lot about GitHub things this past year or so. I'm learning from the GitHub teams as part of being GitHub star. So I'm enjoying that. I hope I am awarded the GitHub Star Award again next year, so I can continue that collaboration because I'm really happy about that, and I'm very honored because it's a community nomination. 16,000 people nominated by people all over the world, and 60 of us winning the award or something like that. So it's very much an honor in so many ways. What else? Still feel free to ask questions and I'll answer them. So then I'll just keep rambling about things I like to do, like this library I was talking about, the ng worker router component store. I've been scratching an itch with this one because I've added this renovate bot. It's a GitHub app by a third party, white source. They're creating many tools like this, code scanning and things like that. This one, renovate, you can read more about it on docs. What is it? Renovate docs. Here it is. Yeah. So this is the website. Read more about it here. Anyways, there's a GitHub app, but you can also run it in a container or as a CLI tool. It's free for open source. I don't know if there's paid plans for anything. Anyways, it's fully featured and free as far as I know. Yeah, it says everything is free. I don't know. I'm happy. So what it does, it's similar to Dependabot by GitHub, but supports even more ecosystems and it's more configurable. So I'm very, very happy with that. Going to look even more into Dependabot at some point as well, but right now Renovate really covers my needs. So I wanted to automate the maintenance of an open source library because for this one, even though it's a very small library, I'm using NX, I'm using Angular, a bunch of tools. Even though it just got started, let's look at my dependencies here. All of this, right? Angular stuff, NGRX, RxJS, Zone.js, Angular tooling, Angular ESLint, Angular CLI, NX CLI, all the NX packages, Angular schematics, and Cypress, and ESLint, and Jest, and PostCSS, and ng packager, and Prettier, and TypeScript. So all of this gets updates all the time, and this is really a very annoying chore of maintaining open source libraries. It's the least favorite thing to do, and you have to do it all the time. And so I configured this Renovate bot to do it for me, and I've gotten pretty far. I'm very far at this point. It's been doing some nice things. So first thing you do is you create this, what's it called, a Renovate JSON file in your repo, and you can add some, the documentation is extensive and most of the things make sense, but there's so many options. So that's good and bad, because like you can do some presets based on your needs, but for this one I really wanted to automate as much as possible. So what I did is I added some custom rules here for NX. So let's see, what do we have? We have NX patch. So all these packages that are maintained by NX for an NX Angular repo, they will be automatically patched. So that means the patch version. So semantic versioning is major version dot minor version dot patch version. And Serkan went to sleep. Have a good night, Santosh. Talk to you soon. But anyways, all these dependencies, they will be patched automatically, and also the log files will be updated every now and then. So that's one of the rules, and that will be auto-merged. So Renovate will keep an eye on all these packages, new versions. Whenever there's a new patch version, it will create a pull request, and it will even auto-merge that pull request if all my CI checks goes well. So the building, the linting, the testing. So, for example, today I think I got an NX patch. Let's go find it. Here it is. Oh, this one I didn't even see. This was 17 minutes ago. So what happened? I don't know. Maybe it was, probably it was unpublished, this version. It happens sometime with NX. The version arrives and there's some things are out of sync, so they add a new patch. I think this is the third version today. So there's actually a configuration for Renovate to kind of wait a few days before you get the update, but I want it as fast as possible. So let's see one that I did get patched today by Renovate. Here, this one. So it was, so the way I set it up here, oh, this is actually a different rule. Why is that? Oh, okay. So the thing is, all these different versions of things that are not narwhal, they will be patched whenever there is a new version. So no minor releases, no major releases, but all the patch versions will be updated automatically. And then comes another rule set here for pinning all the narwhal dependencies. So that means removing the carets and things like that, that are the version range matching symbols like the caret and the tilde character and things like that. That will be removed so that it will always be exactly the version that is defined in package JSON. So it'll do that for the NX, all the narwhal packages. That is this rule. And the one we saw before was NX migrate. So whenever there's a new version of Narwhal Workspace, we'll get a pull request like this. So this happened today. There was an update from 13.3.4 to 6. There was also 5 that was unpublished. And whenever that happens, so this is just this one package, right? And I get the release notes here. That's pretty nice. I can see what changed. But anyways, I created a GitHub workflow that goes in and runs NX migrate so that all the dependencies are updated and any migration generators will be run automatically as well. There's usually not ones for the patch versions, but this also works for major and minor versions, which is very interesting because I think it was, let's see, I did one somewhere here. Where is it? Looking for Narwhal Workspace. I should just search. Here, this one probably. From 13.1.4 to 13.3.4. 13.3 was a pretty big feature release, and there was a 13.2 between them, right? So all of this is being done in one pull request. So I get the release notes from all the versions since I last updated, right? Everything is here, and then my action is, this was when I was fine-tuning it, right? But my action here was updating all the managed dependencies, as we see here. For example, Angular from 12.2 to 13.1, but also NGRX and Angular ESLint and all these nice things that are managed by NX. Oh, I see I forgot one here. Schematics Angular should also be updated. So I need to do that. Yeah, I need to look into that. Anyways, this is being done by my workflow in GitHub, which is running NX migrate commands and doing yarn install and doing run the migrations files and things like that. And if all of that goes well, the branch, the pull request will be auto-merged. But there were some other things here, like I was able to update the NGRX ESLint plugin to version 2 because it had a dependency on ESLint 8. So version 1 didn't work anymore after the version was changed by this NX version. So I think here you can see there, we went from ESLint 7 to 8. So I had to do that update myself, but all the work of updating the dependencies and running the migrations, like here, this option was added, and this git ignore thing was added to support the Angular build cache. And there might be several other things. Maybe there are further down. Yeah, like patching some configurations. This is exactly what NX is great for. And apparently there was some ESLint rule change, so I had to move up my private method to somewhere else. The ordering of things was not correct according to lint rules anymore. So I had to do that myself. If there was a lint fix, the bot, I could have, I don't know. Yeah, I could have created a workflow bot for that, similar to you saw in my work repo. There's some formatting here, I guess. And so they also changed the test setup, and they changed it to destroy after each false. Oh, well, that's not great. Is it because we're using the Jest preset for Angular. I don't know why Narwhal did that. I would want it to true, which is even the default now in Angular, so that's interesting. Anyways, all of this was done by workflows and by Renovate, so very happy to not have to do much maintenance, and I'm now patched to all the latest versions of my dependencies, and you can see here there's actually quite a lot of things just being done by Renovate all the time. So now, instead of it being a chore to maintain all these dependencies, I go in this dashboard, as they call it, the dependency dashboard, which is an issue that it will update over time. And I see, oh, is there anything new? Oh, I still have this major update to Node.js 16. I currently have it configured so that it will not auto-merge this. But as you can see here, it's updating the Node version in all my different places. To support all the tooling, I have an NVM configuration. In package.json, I'm using Volta, and engines property is being used by something, and this one is being used by something. For example, I think I use it for GitHub workflows. Let's see. Yeah, here in the setup node, here. In the setup node action, you can pass it a node version file, and it will use the version specified there. So that's pretty nice. And we can add the cache yarn when we're using yarn, and it will cache all the dependencies for us in the GitHub cache. So yeah, pretty nice setup. And now, instead of hating the dependency management, it's actually quite fun, because I go and see what did it patch when I was working or sleeping, and what new major versions might be here, because major versions will pop up in this dashboard, and I will have to click like a ticket box, and it will create the PR, and then I can go inspect it, and maybe I'll add some things. For example, in this one, I want to automatically update the types node package as well, so that it matches the new node version. So yeah, that's Renovate. Really awesome product. I suggest you also try it out. You can go look at my repo here for inspiration. I'm pretty far with it at this point, so I'm very, very happy with the results so far. Making dependency management a joy, an exciting joy, instead of a boring chore. And you don't have to convince your managers to do maintenance when the bot is doing it for you, right? So there's no excuses anymore. That's awesome. All right. So there's still a few people online. Feel free to write any questions in the YouTube chat. I'll answer them, because I kind of ran out of things to talk about. There were some other questions from people on Twitter, but if they're not here, they're not getting answered. So you can come ask them some other time, maybe. And I'll be happy to answer. It's also getting a little late, so yeah, I'll just stop now if you don't have any more questions. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for your interest. Feel free to tweet to me about any of this. I'll be happy to answer. Okay, Alexander, advice on how to start taking part in open source projects. Do you know any projects that don't require really deep Angular TSJS knowledge? Okay. So when you're asking, I mean, I'm kind of assuming that you are familiar with Angular, but you don't feel like an expert, that you would go contribute to Angular or NGRX or something like that. So what you could do is join our open learning projects. So let's go look at them. Because you are asking specifically for any projects. And well, all the ones we discussed in the session, like we have a backlog in Lumberjack. There's plenty of things there in our project board that you could go help with. There's these open learning projects like here in the This is Angular GitHub organization. And this is the URL. And we also have the This is Learning GitHub organization. And here you'll see this NGRX Essentials course that we talked about earlier. So this is an open learning course, so it's similar to documentation, right? You can look at typos. You can submit a pull request by clicking here, and then you'll open a pull request for this. It's either Markdown or MDX, so that is Markdown with JSX. That's for some of the files. So this is a little more straightforward because you only need to know Markdown. Of course, you might need to know some NGRX, but you could learn that from the course, right? And maybe you just see a typo, so you can go submit a pull request for that. That would be great. And we also have this Angular guides, the open learning Angular guides, but this is Angular. It doesn't have a website yet, and it's something we started a long time ago, back in 2019. It was originally meant for indep.dev, but it was never finished. So it was something I started, basically. But now it has an open license, and it doesn't have a website yet. I'll probably do a Docusaurus website similar for the other courses. But anyways, inside of here, there's suggestions for all the different topics we can write about. So if you have anything to add here in any of these topics, or maybe you want to add another topic, feel free to go in here and just maybe you'll write something about Angular components or modules, pipes, or other suggested topics, or suggest one yourself. And in the This is Learning organization, we have the RxJS Fundamentals course. So you can also go find minor changes you want to in here, and similar thing. You'll go to the bottom, there will be a button that says edit this page. That will open a pull request. So any contributions is very much welcome. Other than that, let's look at your question again. How to start taking part. Documentation is always a great place to start because it doesn't require much technical knowledge, at least for how do I run the test, how do I get a local developer environment, all these things. How do I run the CI and all that. So documentation and courses like this is a good place to start. What else? Well, you could go to a repo and it will say, let's look at the NGRX repo. You will go to issues and you'll find labels here, accepting PRs. This is where they're looking for help for fixing bugs or adding features. You could also look for a label called Good First Issue. Like so. So there's two here, and they might be a little advanced, but sometimes you'll get lucky. For for example, this one. NGRX example application not working in strict mode. So you would enable Angular strict mode. You will go through all the compilation errors and the lint errors and things like that. And you will help improve the example app in the NGRX repo. So that's one example. I mean, you're asking about something that doesn't require really deep Angular knowledge. But this is, according to NGRX, this is as simple as it gets for some of these things. But yeah, many repos will have this good first issues. Let's go to Angular, the main Angular repo. Let's go look at their issues. Let's take a label. They have many labels. Good first issues or help wanted. Oh, I guess it's looking for some that have both. Okay, so good first issue. No, there are no good first issues in Angular. Oh, that's too bad. But here's some closed and merged ones. Yeah, so here there was a broken link. So that, yeah, you might want to do that, right? What's here? Here's the deep dive podcast. That was my podcast, which doesn't exist anymore, only on YouTube. Oh, they didn't think it was on par in regards to number of episodes and popularity. That's not nice. It's still out there. It's on YouTube now on this very channel actually, and there were other topics than Angular, but there were some good ones with Angular content as well, and some advanced ones like Michael Lotke talking about the async pipe. There's someone comparing Angular to React, going from Angular development to React development and the other way around. That was interesting as well. There were 6 episodes, like an hour or so each one. There were some great guests. Yeah, so it was removed from the Angular website or what? Oh, that was too bad. Anyways, go look for good first issues and you might get lucky. You could also come join our public Discord and we'll help you get started. Let me find a link for that because we don't currently have a website. So look through our newsletter on Twitter. You might find it, the link inside of each newsletter issue, I think. But I'll look for an invite link right now. Here it is. This is our public Discord channel for This is Learning. So come say hi and we'll ask people for projects you can contribute to. Yeah, that's the advice I have. Go add pull requests to documentation, look for good first issues, but there are not a lot of them and some are advanced, but you might find a nice one if you look for them. I would recommend looking for issues in projects you already know, like or are using, because then you have an interest in learning more about it, and it'll give you a better understanding about, say, Angular, NGRX, or any library you're using with Angular or something like that. Okay, that's definitely it for today. Thank you for joining this AMA session. It's now 11 p.m., so I'll be closing down the computer, going to sleep at some point, and that's it from me today. See you some other time.